So, 3 years ago, my freshman year of high school, I wanted to join ROTC, but I decided not to because I listened to the stereotypes that I was told that all people in ROTC did was work out and run laps, and I wanted no part of that. Now, I play rugby, and I'm a Catholic, and I've heard all the negative stereotypes you can possibly think about for those two things, so I figured if I wanted to really understand what ROTC was about, I needed to just join it. So I talked to my counselor, and a few months later, I found myself right in the middle of an ROTC classroom, and I was facing what stereotypes were true and what were false. So one of the stereotypes I hear all the time that really is just not true is that ROTC means nothing. I always hear people say, it's just a stupid high school class. They don't do anything important in there. Well, over the 3¼ years that the program has been in existence at Howell High School, we have generated over 6,000 hours of community service through Gleaners, VA Hospital, and Adopt a Highway, and many more organizations. On top of that, inspection is a program-wide evaluation of how well our ROTC unit runs, and it occurs every 3 years and is conducted by the director of AFJ ROTC. And last year, being our 3rd year in existence, was our first ever inspection, and we were awarded Distinguished Unit Award with Merit, which is the highest award an ROTC program can acquire, and only 8% of all units in the country even acquire. Which is all fantastic, and I'm so proud of ROTC for doing that. But let me tell you why it's important to me. When I first joined ROTC, it was the 2nd semester of my sophomore year, and I was not confident in my public speaking abilities or my leadership abilities, and I really just tried to stick to myself. And I was fortunate enough to make some friends immediately after joining ROTC, and they took me under their wing and let me tag along in things like community service and the events. And I just grew to love every little bit of it. I tried to go to as much as I possibly could, and I found that all of my work that I just thought was fun had landed me a spot as element leader. Now, for all of you who are not aware of the structure of an ROTC classroom, an element lead is in charge of 3 to 4 people, and their primary task is to take attendance every day and lead in small group activities. And I was enormously proud of what I did as element lead, and when the school year was finished, I was very upset because I only had a semester in ROTC while everybody else had an entire year. So I had to suffer through an ROTC-less summer, and when I got back to school, I was very excited. And I sat down in class quietly, and I just looked around, and I was like, wow, this is a fantastic flight, or a class. I wonder who's going to be in charge. And at that moment, Colonel and Sergeant were both looking at me and pointing at me. And I was just petrified. I just tried to look down like I hadn't seen anything, and I just prayed that I hadn't seen something that I wasn't supposed to. And a few minutes later, they pulled me out of class and they told me that I was flight commander, which it means to be in charge of the class. It's the cadet who runs the day-to-day operations of the class. And I was extremely, extremely happy for it because it's a huge honor to be selected to be flight commander out of your entire class. But then I got really, really nervous because I realized I didn't know the first thing about how to be a flight commander. So it was a day of mixed emotions, but I got through it. And at first, it was a little difficult. I was promoted over a few of the cadets in my class, and they were never necessarily insubordinate, but there was definitely a barrier I had to break through before they considered me as their leader. So I just did the only thing I knew how to do, and I just tried to be as good of a role model as possible. In class, I tried to learn the curriculum inside and out so I could be a good resource to my cadets if they ever had a question. On uniform inspection day, I tried to be kind when I corrected them, but constructive enough to the point where they wouldn't make the same mistake again. On PT Fridays, I would always try to be at the front of the pack, and I would never have them do an exercise I wasn't about to do with them. So it was all fine for a few months, but then we had a slip up. One day in class, my cadets were consistently talking throughout the entire lesson and through the following quiz. They were beginning to talk over Colonel, and I would call out at ease, which means be quiet, and they'd be quiet for a couple of minutes, and then they'd get right back to talking. And as the class was winding down, I realized I needed to say something. So I walked to the front of the class and I said, there is a time for fun, and there is a time to be silent and show respect. The amount of disrespect that I've seen for Colonel and myself today is unacceptable. Do you understand me? And there were a few yes, sirs. I said, do you understand me? And in unison they said, yes, sir. And as they all got up and ran out of class, I caught the eye of one of my freshmen, and I will never forget the look he gave me. It was a look It was a mixed look of fear and confusion, similar to that of a child first scolded by his parent. And I had a moment of dread, and I thought, the relationship that I have worked so hard to build up over the past few months has just been ruined because I lost my temper. And the next day when I was walking into class, I was more worried than I was on my first day. But I walked in and the strangest thing happened. They weren't mad at me. I walked in and they said, "Good morning, Ferris." And I said, "Oh, good morning." I sat down, got a few smiles. I was like, "Hello." And throughout class, if they ever had a question, they would raise their hand properly and they wouldn't talk unless they were called upon. And at the end of class, I got up and I walked over and I sat down and I talked to my cadets like I always did. And they weren't frustrated with me or anything. And I realized something. I had finally earned the respect of my cadets that I was working so hard to gain. They finally understood when it was time to have fun and goof around and when it was time to buckle down to do what you were told. On the other hand, I learned when it was time to be lenient with my cadets and when it was time to crack the whip and let them know that they'd done something wrong. After that, I noticed a complete behavior change with my cadets, but it did take a little bit of motivation at first. We had an event called the Military Ball that was coming up, which is just a dance and it's very fun. And we had about 12% of our cadets going to that, which I believe would translate to like 2 out of like the 24 that we had. And I said, listen, if we can get at least 80% of our flight to go to the Military Ball, I will dress up as Dwight Schrute from The Office. I don't think a whole week passed before they went from 12% to 90%. So I had to dress up as Dwight Schrute. And after they found out about how much I love The Office, they stole my $10 pen and they put it in Jell-O. Which, if any of you have seen The Office, Jim does that to Dwight and Michael. But that was one of my favorite moments of all last year. And after that, a complete behavior change happened. My cadets became motivated, and they started going to things like community service events and the outside of school events. And they created an atmosphere of acceptance for when all the other cadets from the other flights would join us. They would be immediately accepted as a part of the group. And it created what is still known today as the Charlie Children. Now, Charlie being third hour, and then the children was just my really awkward way of getting their attention. It was a complete flip in the mindset of my cadets. If anybody else from another flight came over, they were immediately accepted as part of the group without any hesitation whatsoever. And if I had to choose one thing to be my legacy for ROTC, without a doubt, it would be the Charlie Children. Oops. There we go. Let's see. So the question still remains. Why is ROTC given such a negative stereotype? Why are a group of cadets who do nothing but good for their community ridiculed and alienated for what they do? Well, I've asked myself that question for the 2 years that I've been in the program now. And the only conclusion that I've been able to draw is that maybe somewhere along the line, somebody had a bad experience with one of our cadets. And, you know, that's fine. Every organization has that one person who just rubs people the wrong way. But that is no reason to write off ROTC or any other group as a bad organization. This is what ROTC is about. It's about developing friendships with people you wouldn't normally have the opportunity to do so with. It's about teaching the importance of community service and inspiring others to do the same. It's about finding direction in life around people who have your best interest in mind. ROTC has been a fantastic experience for myself and hundreds of other cadets. And without it, our school and community would be a very, very different place. Thank you.